now we're like, yeah, we're fake. But yeah, at some point, that have you noticed in if you use Google Maps, it says turn right, left, turn left next to Walgreens.
Yep.
So they figured out how to insert those. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People a chance to sign in.
Mm-hmm. This is just so he can get in the. This is yeah, he wants to. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, I'm actually like this mint tea. It's just making me. These are clever little buttons there with a little bow on the button. That's so very.
How's that, John? Just as well.
You're still okay? Did she ruin it? Should be fun.
So a lot of their mics in the time.
Mm-hmm. So much walking.
All right, we are live in 3, 2.
That's what I think about when I constantly.
So we're delighted to be here today
We are.
With Robert Todd, Chief Product Officer at Emtrain. My name is Laraine McKinnon. I'm a talent and culture strategist.
She is.
And we're here today to talk a little bit about people analytics. So Robert's just back from HR Tech. We thought we'd share some of what we see out there in the industry around HR technology, the evolution. We thought we'd get into a bit more about AI and machine learning and how that's being used, and perhaps some of the opportunities in HR around insights that are coming from people analytics. So Robert, you want to tell us what you saw at HR Tech this year?
A lot of walking. You know, like Las Vegas, there's so much walking between every little thing, which is actually good walking, so that's good.
And you got your Fitbit or Apple Watch?
I have my Apple Watch. It's always tracking everything that happens. Yes. There's so much walking between every little thing, which is actually good walking, so that's good.
And you got your Fitbit or Apple Watch?
I have my Apple Watch. It's always tracking everything that happens. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I always get good numbers at conferences, so that's good. It was. We were talking about this earlier. I think when I like to go when I go to a conference, especially something like HR Tech, which I think is really quite fascinating. Expectations. They did that. Next big offsite event, no incidents. Like if they hadn't have tracked that, if they hadn't, so I still think there's some of that, a little bit of trepidation of like, I don't want to track and record this because then I'll be responsible for doing something about it. And it's kind of the truth, you know. They are kind of responsible, and you are kind of responsible anyway. Yep. But if you have the data, you can actually do something about it and make a difference. So yeah, and one of the analytics, I was talking to one of the bigger analytics system vendors at HR Tech, and they said that when they get data from customers on things like harassment, they have a sort of code book. So it's like, well, we recorded 14 incidents of quarter Big Macs, or you know, like they don't,
problem A.
They don't
it should
even,
be.
Yeah, it should be. They don't even like actually. So
use the words.
There is a lot of. It's not, and it's not just a matter of the driver is not just privacy, which is an important thing, right? We really need to pay attention to that. It is the kind of liability aspect of it that I think is driving a lot of behavior. That the fear of liability keeps us from having the information we need to do the right thing, right? Like to actually fix something and do better.
I see a lot of competing priorities within organizations too. You know, different groups have different purposes for wanting the data, and a different comfort level with the data that they might get.
Yeah.
A different comfort level with transparency, and a different access to the data itself. So you might see somebody in a diversity and inclusion role who's really interested in getting a swath of data that's not really available to them, sits in another system or under another business group. It's hard to extract some of that data, particularly when you've got a large engagement survey that you're doing every other year that's asking a small set of questions, and it's the same questions every year to get year-on-year changes.
Right.
Or maybe it's some small pulse surveys, but you don't want to get too much survey fatigue, so there's a limited number of pulse questions that you can ask. And then how do you get the data that you really need, right?
It's completely right. It's like the space in which you have to operate as a, one group in an organization, you're competing with everybody else who wants to, engage employees to get, information from them or what have you. And so finding ways that are not intrusive or create just like a more overhead for the employee, but are actually an interaction with them that's beneficial to them, so that the way I get the data is like, people kind of like to have conversations. So imagine, that instead of sending out a survey, you sent people out to go, hey, can I just come in and talk to you for an hour about what's going on in your organization? Yeah, have some coffee and chat. Like that's, that could be a benefit rather than an overhead. So
not scalable per se, but you get a lot of deep and rich information out of that conversation. Right?
Exactly.
And so, I observe the same across the clients that I work with. Sort of a desire to have information, but a little bit of trepidation around what will come, especially around a harassment incident or a discrimination incident or bias incidents, of which there tends to be many. And then sort of that question about what do we do about it when we find out about it? And so I think that maybe that's why Insights has had less of a focus in terms of Google Analytics. It's a lot easier to report turnover numbers and your promotion numbers than it is to say, we have X number of people who might be feeling like there's a certain bias happening within the organization or may not trust management. I mean, it's pretty hard to go to management and say, hey, we're going to ask this question.
Yeah, do people trust you?
Yeah, or if me as the employee, if I have a complaint, do I feel like my complaint will be taken seriously?
Yeah.
Because what if the answer no?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, what the things that you and I are talking about right now, because they're, this, pointing back to HR tech, because they are sort of emotion laden and sensitive, because they're kind of tricky and complicated, I think a lot of what you see at HR tech is focused on stuff that is not at all controversial, not at all sensitive, not at all, it's the, just the plain factual data of, and that's good, that's useful. But if you're afraid of, if you can't, if you're kept from getting information that has that, those emotional content around it, then you're going to miss some of the stuff that's having the most impact on your organization,
So it's super remarkable that our CEO, Janine Yancey, decided over 10 years ago that she was going to dive right into the hardest stuff, the harassment issues, the bias issues, and create a dialogue, right? To say to people, hey, we all need to have some conversation about this so we can understand what our social norms are and what's okay and what's not okay. Do you see a lot of other organizations sort of delving into this more sensitive and difficult information?
No, I mean, not, it was kind of set up question. I really don't. I know, I really don't.
It needs to happen. So who else might be out there?
I really don't. I think there are some, so what we see is there's some people trying to set up, so, most organizations have hotlines where you can report an incident. And if you've ever looked at one of those, or if you've ever reported an incident, it's kind of like filling out a police report. It feels like I am about to accuse somebody of a crime. And maybe I am, but maybe I'm not. But it's a very high threshold of, man, you have to be really willing to just throw everything away and like get into that kind of a process. It feels like a legal thing. And so there are some companies out there that are trying to create more friendly, safer ways for people to report stuff. I think that's a useful thing. It's still very narrow. It's focused on the behavior, the issues have already gotten pretty far down the road. And so I think what's what's helpful is getting engaged and having those conversations early, talking about the things in the culture that contribute to or lead to those things happening, rather than just capturing the worst cases of behavior, the worst, which are, probably more frequent than most of us would like to say, but not dealing with the things that, because the thing we know about behavior change, the culture and the feedback you get from the social groups that you're in, and the culture, the thing we know about behavior change, the culture and the feedback you get from the social groups that you're in and the culture, the feedback you get, that's what changes behavior. If people are signaling constantly that X is, not acceptable, we're as social animals, our behavior adapts. And so you need to get a conversation going. You can't just like deal with the downstream
and peer learning and that
Yeah.
dialogue that
Yep.
will help people sort of all come to the conclusion that this isn't good for us as a group, as a
Yeah.
team, as an organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm always fascinated by subcultures because I think if you go to anyone and say, "Hey, how's the culture at your company?" You're going
Right.
to get some theme that many people will express. Oh, the people are great, or it's fun working here. You'll find some theme. And then it's the subcultures of how things actually happen, how they actually work. And I feel like that's what a lot of organizations are missing, and that's what the insights opportunity is.
Yeah.
So yeah, we say that we operate with integrity. In fact, it's one of our values. But in these situations, we tend to look the other way. Or these sorts of people, maybe people in power or people, on a certain key project, will tend to be able to push the boundaries a bit more.
Oh yeah, and you're talking about, so there was one of the keynotes at HR Tech. This guy, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget his name, which is really rude because I'm talking on, because people are listening to this conversation potentially. But he's at ADP Research. There's a report on basically what has people be engaged in work. And one of their interesting findings was that people are on people are on teams, that I consider myself part of a team, is a big influencer and engagement, positive, but that people don't really understand what those teams are. They don't understand what the organizations are. It's very clear that it's not the organizational hierarchy. That's not my team.
Yeah.
And that if you really want to have impact, you have to kind of understand what are those in groups or tribes, or what are those social groups, or what are those other things that constitute my team that, I identify with. So I think that's something that, we're really interested in uncovering, kind of what creates my environment, because I think we've all experienced, my experiences on my team may be very different from somebody just adjacent to me, and that the corporate values, corporate culture, gets strongly interpreted by by us, the people closest to me. That's what really affects me. So I think that I think there's a lot of insight to come about, and really requires some digging about understanding what that work life is for somebody and what really frames their experience and work, which is pretty far away from, do we offer them discount movie tickets
Right.
at the,
Or the benefits package looks
the
like.
benefits package looks
Yes.
like, which is kind of like
Engagement numbers.
it's kind of like the thing that happens, that I make a decision when I'm looking at a job, but then then it's kind of like, that's just what it is. And, all those other things. Yeah. All those other things really impact my day-to-day experience and ability to get work done,
So I think I'm most excited about some of the data that we've gotten to work on together for some of our clients, where we ask a question like, can I be my authentic self at work? And you see the data that comes back as an insight, and you see that many people strongly agree that they can bring their authentic self to work, but you get a fair number of people who say that they can't.
Yeah.
Right? So you get these bifurcated distributions of people who say, oh yeah, it's easy for me to be my authentic self, or it's not.
Yeah.
And my sense, and this is more, qualitative than quantitative, is that the folks who feel like they can bring their authentic self to work probably fit within a look and a feel of what the company expects. And the others are trying to fit in.
Yeah.
So they're trying to figure out what their social mode is, what that model is, as opposed to everyone feeling like they can be their authentic self in the organization. People not spending that psychological time to fit in.
Yeah. I mean, and that is going back to where we were opening kind of remarks, that's the social environment in which we are all living in right now, right? Where we all went from, pretty homogenous communities that we existed in to very, heterogeneous communities that we live in, where we're interacting with people with very different backgrounds and experiences, and and that's challenging because we can't assume all of these things that we used to assume when we were more stratified. And now that's all, we're bringing all that stuff, all that difference into the workplace, and realizing that, wow, we actually have to get good at working with everybody if we're going to be good at work, you know? So I think that that is, but it's also where, you know, with a lot of organizations have discovered, that is really the source of innovation. That's really the source of having a unique perspective. That's really is like, you know, the seeing things from multiple perspectives, right? You see things that, yeah, you see things that other people are never going to see because they have the, you know, group think, you know, kind of thing. So
you kind of get in the flow. You get in the flow of innovation, of talking to one another, of bringing in different perspectives and letting that influence better outcomes for your global consumer base or for your new product idea. Getting in the flow. Okay, so I think to wrap it up, HR tech, pretty interesting in terms of you know, multiple channels, total rewards, the full employee experience. Hiring and recruiting still really important, but this people analytics being a new emerging field that folks are just starting to figure out. People analytics itself being about some of the logistics numbers, but maybe a bigger opportunity in terms of insights. And then looking at, you know, people, how they work, who they work with, who they consider their social groups at work, and how we can help to create a dialogue in order to help people work better together and get on that company mission.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for talking today. Hopefully we'll get to do it again. Thanks to anyone who had the opportunity to tune in. I'm sure that we will send along the name of the keynote speaker.
We will.
HR Tech.
That would be really smart to do.
And everyone have a great day. Thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks, Asina.
Thanks, people.